Claire's
Oh
a professional.
oh my goodness. Good morning, everybody. And
Mhm.
Coach DJ and myself are going to unload some very quick, very intensive stuff. Look at her. She's shaking her head. She called me and she was like, "Hey, Claire, can you do this for us?" And I was like, "Absolutely."
I
So,
said, I haven't done this since 2006. So it'd probably be better if they all had somebody in there that knows what they're doing now. So I'm a business coach. I'm a real estate business coach, not a mentor. So yay, Claire, yay. I'm here to clap and say, yay, Claire.
well, that's awesome. So it was interesting that we're going to be going over contract to close. So when I say contract to close to our emerging agents, I want y'all to tell me what that means to you when you hear it. What does that mean? Come off mute and just tell me.
Everything from writing up that contract through to closing table.
And beyond, right?
Well, yes, for after, beyond, yes, but contract to close specifically rings the bell of when I'm getting ready to write that offer, all the way through to closing table and the nurture after.
Yeah. So even as emerging agents, I want y'all to keep this in mind. This is a threefold issue from contract to close. Okay. You have your mindset, you have your skill set, and you have your actions. So if we have our mindset and our skill set and our actions put in place for our contract to close as newer agents or emerging agents or people coming back into the business agents, where do you feel that you need the most information for encouragement and for your confidence? Shh, this is interactive. This is for y'all. Tim, I'm going to pick on you. He's laughing because he knew I was going to. He's right next to me on my screen.
I figured as much.
So where are you if contract to close? What does that mean? How does it make you feel?
Your job's not done at just writing the contract, because we're not just writing contracts. We're building relationships.
I am so glad you said building relationships. This is what's so funny. Whether you are handling contract to close for one of your sellers or whether you're handling contract to close for one of your buyers, the optimal time to receive more business is during the transaction. Don't wait until you're closed and say, "Oh, how did I do? Who do you know that you can refer?" Here's what's so cool. Buyers and sellers alike, when they're in the process of contract to close, is when their emotions are most high. It's when they're talking about it with their friends and family and there's conversations going on. It's our responsibility as their agent to make sure that all of the people in their circle are definitely handled with the best real estate agent, which is you, right? Okay, so Tech Bits, you put your hand up.
I did, Claire, because you struck a chord with me right then and there.
Okay.
And I was thinking about this the other day, and it's funny you brought this up. How many times as agents are we viewing a house and it's a really nice house, but it's not the fit for this buyer?
Mhm.
And why aren't we saying the words of, "God, this is a beautiful house. Do you know anybody who this house fits?" That's it right there, Claire. We're we're
Abs-
we're
Yeah,
we're we're looking to expand by literally making it easy for them to tell us if they've got anybody. Like I said, you hit a chord.
absolutely. And when we're also, I know that this is a contract to close, and I'm going to continue with that, Tech Bits, is it's interesting that when we're in homes and we're previewing those homes with our buyers, isn't it interesting that the buyer may not like that home, but somebody is popping in your head that's in your pipeline that it would fit? And are you reaching out to them to say, "Hey, when's the next time that I just walked in a house and I think that it ticks all of your boxes." It's that instant stuff with our mindset and our skill set and the actions that we do that create more momentum into our pipelines And it all has to do with us and making sure that we're creating that bridge of that relationship for our people. So Robert, thank you for bringing that up. Tech Bits, thanks for bringing that up. Sorry for the snafu. So Tim, we're back to you. You're on mute, buddy.
Yes,
So I know that you have done some open houses and you have some people in your pipeline. And if I was to tell you to help me through the process of contract to close, what do you feel is the most important first step in the contract to close to help your person understand the process?
you have to give me time to think on that one.
I'm so glad you said that. So you have time to think, go back on mute, because here's what's so cool. How many as newer emerging agents or agents that have been in the business a long time? I see Karen's face. Thank you for popping your camera on. How many of y'all have a checklist in your wheelhouse for buyers and sellers contract to close? Because a buyer's contract to close and a seller's contract to close are different. How many of y'all have those checklists? And why are the checklists important, Karen?
I definitely have a checklist. I'm naughty and have it in my head. It's, it's ingrained. I do need to do a written one. That would be a great tool to have for this group.
Well, thankfully enough, I have some samples that are
Yay.
PDF format so
Wow.
that you can nick and tweak them the way that you want to go. Because it's so interesting. If you are an emerging agent and you are in Florida and part of your checklist during the inspection period, not weeks before closing, but during the inspection period, you're not asking that buyer to reach out to an insurance company and providing them with preferred vendors to make sure that the home is insurable. What are those requirements? Because your home inspection may need a wind mitigation. Your home inspection may need a 4-point inspection. Your home inspection may need a septic inspection in order for them to secure their insurance. So in order for them to process and get in touch with that insurance company, it's going to help them on the inspection side as well. Okay. I'm throwing out stuff for a Florida margin that's important in contract to close before we get into the contract to close. I know it's a little weird, but that's the disclaimer for Florida. There are interesting things going on in Florida. If you are in Florida and you still have a mortgage, you probably got a notification from your escrow that it's increasing your mortgage payment because your insurance just went up.
And especially during hurricane season, you want your buyers to secure their insurance and get it bound, because if there's a named storm the week of closing, it's not closing if the insurance isn't in place.
And it's also going to require another appraisal. And then that will take a couple more weeks. So Karen, I'm glad you brought that up. So TechBits has its hand up again.
What we're recommending to people, Claire, in this circumstance, just go pay for the policy straight up. Just go pay for the policy, have it fully in place. It's very difficult for them to back out once you've paid for it.
Yes.
If it doesn't go through, you just get your money back.
Yes, and Robert, what we are finding is they won't bind it because they need certain stuff from the inspection. So that's the reason why that I threw it out there first.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
get
absolutely.
it done. It's hurricane season.
Yes. So DJ gave me an awesome checklist that I'm supposed to go through and wrapping my head around this. So as we're going through the contract to close, trust me when I say, I promise you that I will post the examples of checklist of contract to close for buyers and sellers in our chat once I'm done with the content. I want us to get through the content so that you feel empowered, so that you are encouraged to do what you need to do. So here we go. When do you start saying that you're under contract? When you've submitted an offer? Karen's shaking her head. Tim's shaking. Yes, right answer. No. When do we actually have a contract?
When the offer is accepted.
And
And it's communicated back to the other party.
excellent, Karen. Thank you. Thank you. So signed and delivered to all parties, right? So here we are, it's 9 o'clock at night. You just received the contract back from buyer or seller with all information on it. When is day 0? When is day 1? Karen,
Day 0 is the date that it was communicated or delivered back to the parties. And all initials have been received. No more initials are needed. Day 1 is the next calendar day.
okay, so here's what's so cool. Karen is exactly right. However, what's so funny is in each and every state, depending upon what time that email got to you, is depending upon which day is what. Here's a safe thing to remember. Very safe. When you have received the contract fully signed by all parties, make a mental note in your head that it is day 1. You've just built in yourself about 12 to 24 hours of protection. Because when you are developing your contract to close in your timelines, your timeline of all of your dates that are required for you to follow as their agent are necessary. And if you always call that first day, day 1 instead of day 0, then you will always be safe. It always happens. DJ shaking her head, Karen shaking her head. A lot of people don't like when I say that. However, we're emerging agents and we want to protect you and your license because this is where the rubber meets the road. And if we're empowering you to do best business practices, then you'll never get in trouble. Because I have seen more things fall apart big time over timelines and other agents who don't cooperate on the other side. Oh, well, that expired yesterday. You know what? When you've received all of your information on those contracts and you've received everything back signed by all parties and it's been delivered to all parties, put in your head, that's day 1. That's the day 1. That's day 1. That's day 1. Do I need to say it again? It's day 1. However, based upon your state and when you've received it, it may be day 0, especially if it's a Sunday. Okay. I don't want to get you caught up in the minutia. I just want to protect you as we're going down this road to contract to close. When you see that fully executed contract come out, you need to make sure that you know all the dates on that contract. Date of execution, expiration date of inspections, your inspection period, your financing contingencies period, your appraisal. If it's, different states have different contracts, you got to know that contract. And let me tell you something. It is not your mentor or your broker's responsibility to teach you how to read a contract. It is yours. You're an independent contractor. There are plenty of contract classes within your MLSs. Go to them. And by the way, contracts change every 2 to 4 years. So we get to do this every 2 to 4 years. And it's exciting because it changes with the seasons, changes with the market. It changes to protect people. So it's important to make sure that you know your contracts. That's the reason why it's line by line. It's important that you're going over it. And if your buyers or sellers want their representatives to read it, do so. Because in the state of Florida, it tells them they have the right to do that. Okay. So just make sure that you know that. So timelines, number 1, when you get that offer back, right? Immediately, if not prior to you going under contract, and I'm going to use the example on the buy side just for sake of time purposes, your buyer should already know that when they go under contract, that they need to contact the inspector immediately. That should have already been, and I know that George already has this, and DJ, you've already covered this as well as emerging agents when we're working with buyers, that they already have a list of the preferred vendors of home inspectors, correct? Yeah, right? So it's not going to be something out of the blue because you've already had the conversation with your buyer consultation that, you know what, as soon as we're under contract, we need to schedule this immediately. Sometimes buyers will say, can you schedule it for me? Yes. Who do you want me to contact? Did you hear the way I said that? Yes. Who do you want me to contact? we have to be careful. We're not single agents. Unless you have that specific signed by all parties and you're employed by that buyer or seller, you're a transaction broker in the state of Florida and in most states. Please make sure you're following the law. Karen's like, oh my gosh, this woman is intense. Look at that face. Holy goodness. Good gravy. So, inspections. What comes next, Tim?
Depending on the mortgage appraisal,
Yes, and who schedules the appraisal?
title company.
That was a good answer. That was a good answer.
The
Whoever, however, who schedules the appraisal?
The lender.
Yes, and why does the lender do that?
To protect their loan.
To protect the loan, to protect what the note and the mortgage are, right? Who pays for it?
The buyer
When?
at the closing.
No, ma'am.
Before the closing,
Before the closing.
before,
Yes,
Before the appraisal will go out.
that's right. Before the appraisal goes out. Absolutely. It can be ordered. However, in the beginning portions of an application, typically the lender will request the buyer to give them a credit card number so that when the appraisal comes back, shook, swipe, it's done, right? What's the average cost of an appraisal these days, y'all?
700.
450.
It depends. Can
yeah,
everybody shake their head? It depends. Right?
if it's too much, you get a credit back from the lender though, because there's a max.
Say that again, Stacy.
If they charge too much, you get a credit back at closing because there's a maximum amount that they're allowed to charge.
That is correct. And if you're looking at that, which we're jumping ahead, Stacy, that's a great point. If we're looking ahead and we're looking over that closing disclosure for the buyer, you know, and we see an adjustment, are we going to be able to explain that? How many of y'all have gone over a closing statement? How many of y'all have reached out to your title companies to be versed in how to go over a closing statement or find mistakes? How many of y'all, the only line that you look at is your commission to make sure it's right. However, you did not look at any kind of prorations, or if they put the seller and title policy in the wrong place. Karen's smiling.
The
I have
title
seen
companies
that.
make-
I have
Title companies make mistakes all the time. And you have to check to see not just that all the debits and credits are in the right place, but what if the seller agreed to a repair credit and then the title company forgot to put it on there for the buyer?
Right?
Make sure you do your job.
Absolutely. And so this has a lot to do with this contract dates and contract to close and your checklist and holding on to everything. Because here's the kicker. I do not want y'all to be freaked out with this. I just want you to have this as part of your mindset. From the initial contact of your person to the week after closing, you will perform 276 jobs. Let me say that again. From initial contact to a week after closing, you will have performed 276 jobs. So how important is contract to close? We have to keep it all straight. We have to make sure we're doing our job underneath our licensure, underneath our service agreement with the state of Florida to serve and protect the consumer. And I'm using state of Florida as an example because I'm in Florida. Don't shoot me, Tiffany. I know you're in Virginia. Other people are in other places like Pennsylvania, right? Okay, forgive me. It's okay. We're good. So once we get through and we've wrote down all of our dates, you've already talked about inspections, you've already talked about appraisals. How many of y'all know the process of a loan commitment? the loan application, pre-approval, pre-qualified. Do you know the difference? Here's a tip. You should have more than one lender preferred partner that will sit down with you and help you through the process. Every lender on this God's green earth has different processes. Every lender has different timelines inside of their wheelhouse. Underwriting, right? Sometimes their underwriting takes a long time, sometimes it doesn't. Know their process, know your preferred vendor's processes so that you are aware of this. 2 weeks before closing on a deal that we just closed about 4 weeks ago, the lender said, we have full loan approval. Red flag. A week before closing, every lender does another audit to make sure that the bank statements are updated, that the income is verified, that employment is verified. So if you're getting full loan approval 2 weeks prior to closing, I am saying BS with a quickness. No way. No way. Unless it's a cash deal, but then you wouldn't be talking to a lender, would you? Right? I just want you to be aware to protect yourself. There are certain conversations that you have with your lenders so that you can feel empowered for that. Okay. It's our responsibility to serve and hold the transaction and the consumer. We don't have to know every little intricacy. We just need to know where to get the information, right? Your home inspectors, title company, insurance, loan people, your lenders. What's their underwriting process? When do they send out the CD? You know, because y'all do understand that federal regulations in the past 5 years have changed close to 2,000 times just in the lending industry. Are we supposed to keep up with all of that, or are we just supposed to have a source? Just get a source. I'm throwing a lot at you because this is very important and it's contract to close. So I want y'all to feel empowered and encouraged down this lovely road of contract to close, because that's when your job actually begins, y'all. This is negotiations. This is making sure that you have everything in place. This is cooperating with your person, buyer or seller. It's cooperating with the cooperating agent. Please make sure you know who their broker's name is and their number prior to any issues. Karen, am I wrong? Make sure you have that information. And this is the reason why. Okay, we've got Tech Bits on here, and some of the things that he does in his previous Hell Week was your co-agent was in a car accident and is incapable of moving forward with the rest of the transaction. So who do you call? If we're making sure that you have all the information, then you're less likely to get stressed, which would pass on to your customer. And this is what's so lovely about being on this call with y'all today and having the opportunity that DJ gave us to go through the contract to close, because I throw a lot of information at you as scenarios to make sure that you feel the power and the breadth of what you're getting into, because you are the best at serving your people. We know that, or else you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't have affiliated with us. So we're encouraged, and we want to fill you with as much information as possible. Karen, you came off mute. Go ahead.
Yes, one thing I learned, maybe a year and a half ago, and I love learning, when they changed the Florida contract, and I'm sorry, also, this is just Florida, in 2021, they changed the financing section a whole lot. And one of the things that, I mean, I've read it 100 times at least, but I didn't realize it was really in there and enforceable, but it is in the contract, until one of our agents had her seller cancel a contract where the buyer was ready to close. And the seller's attorney says, you have the right to do that if the buyer didn't do this. Listen to what the buyer must do under this new contract. It's in section 5 of the financing paragraph. The buyer or buyer's agent has to deliver written notice to the seller before the expiration of the financing period that the financing has been approved. If that isn't delivered, the seller can cancel the contract. I was floored. I mean, who does that?
So Karen, in the new FAR contract, it's been in there for years. So it's part of my ingraining that we have to deliver that. And this is what's so funny. Used to, the agent could send it over and say, yes, we're approved, right? However, now it must be in writing from the lender, which falls into a different scope, which
Mhm.
basically we have taught our lenders how to write this. Now listen to me. Us agents have taught the lenders to write this. We have loan approval with contingencies, and they list the resting contingencies, because a week prior to closing, which is typically when our financing contingencies run out, have to do with final approval and audit of to receive the clear to close. So as the lender can write what needs to be left, that is a right that can be delivered to all parties, which is also part of your contract. So a lot of times the agent has to prompt the lender that we need this in writing and tell them how to write it. Kid you not, Karen. Kid you not. It's crazy. So, because a lot of times they've already sent out the CD when it's contingent loan approval, you know, because all it is the final verifications that are left, but they can't say final loan approval or full loan approval until their company has finished their audit, which happens in the last week prior to funding. You know, so know your lender's processes. Understand when they send out the CD to the buyer, because that must be sent out 3 days prior to closing, because it's a protection. And here's the kicker. Are you ready? We are not privy to that information unless the buyer has given written permission to their lender to deliver that to us. And I can assure you that the lender is not going to send the CD to you before they send it to your customer. Ain't going to happen. They will send it to the customer, and the customer can deliver it to you, or the lender can deliver it at the same time, but he is not going to give it to you first. Not going to happen. Just saying. Because it's a protection. It is written as a regulation to protect the consumer. Okay. Which I think for us great agents that are on this call, it's a disservice to the consumer buyer, because lenders make mistakes, title companies make mistakes, agents make mistakes. So we have to check everything. And what are we all doing? The goal is to get the buyer into their house that they want to purchase, right? That's all. But there's a lot of stuff that needs to be involved. So if we have gone, and I'm going to rattle these back down again, you have your time dates for your contract, your timeline. You have all those. You've done the inspections. You've delivered everything that you needed to deliver, made sure that the appraisal is also ordered. Make sure that the insurance company is contacted within the inspection period, so that way we are not sidelined by anything that could come up as an insurability issue. We have talked to the lender to find out what the loan commitment and what is left to do during that, right? So here we are, 2 weeks to 1 week before closing. You must be in constant contact with that lender, because this is where most of your angst will happen. It's 24 hours prior to your financing commitment to expire, and your lender has ghosted you. What do you need to do?
Knock on his office door.
That is so awesome. So this is what's really cool. Put this in your wheelhouse. Make sure that your buyer understands that sometimes there can be delays, and we're going to extend the financing contingency to protect their binder and ability to purchase the house. Right, Karen? She's shaking her head. Yes. Right? because it's our duty to serve and protect the consumer. So if I'm 24 hours and that lender is ghosting me, I'm going to say, you know what? Let me CYA. Let me cover my buyer's assets and file an extension on the financing contingency to obtain the loan approval. Okay? Not a problem. Very rarely do I see the cooperating agent give me any balk about it. Very rarely. Because we've been in constant communication through the whole issue. But you're wanting to protect, because Karen just said earlier, because they didn't receive something in writing from the lender, from that financing, seller can walk away. It's their right, because we didn't deliver, because we placed our buyer in a position of default. What's our responsibility if we are on the buy side? What's our responsibility? Do you know? DJ, what's our responsibility?
Oh, I'm not even muted. I thought I was
No,
muted.
you're not.
Oh, I was looking for the mute button. I lose that all the time. Your responsibility is always to protect your client.
There you go. That's it. That's it. That's exactly right. Okay. So I had a situation, I had a broker call me yesterday, y'all. This is a kid you not. It was funny as all get out. She calls me and she was like, well, Claire, this, that, and the other, and this, that, and the other, and this, that, and the other. And I was like, hang on, Deb. Well, what's our responsibility? Because the vernacular that she was using was as if her cooperating agent who brought the offer on one of her listings, she was saying words as a single agent. And so I said, hang on, you're a broker. Did you ask her if she was a single agent? And did she deliver notice that she was a single agent and she was employed by the buyer and that buyer is going to pay the commission? Did she send that to you? Because the vernacular that she is using is incorrect in the state of Florida. Not happening. Karen's shaking, Karen's smiling from ear to ear. So just recognize and beware of what you are saying, okay? Please don't place yourself or your customer in a position to be harmed. And I'm going to use state of Florida as an example. If I say I have a client, Karen, what does that specifically say?
I have a quiet.
I have a client.
Oh, okay. Client. No, we don't use the word client in transaction brokerage. There are customers. A client indicates single agency. That's one of my pet peeves of real estate terminology. We don't have clients, we have customers.
We have customers.
And we don't have an executed contract when all parties have signed the contract. If you go back to your real estate school book, we have an executory contract when it's fully signed. We have an executed contract when it closes. Just real estate 101.
Real estate 101, right? Real estate 101. So please make sure if you are speaking to your cooperating agents, and this is specifically for Florida, please call your person a customer unless that customer wants you to be a single agent and you have transitioned into a single agency agreement, which must be delivered to your broker and placed and signed by the broker. Okay. Fair enough? Fair enough. So during all of these timeframes, how often do you think that you need to be in direct communication with, for this example, we're talking about buyers? How often?
Like
Almost every day. As many times as it takes to protect them.
Right, exactly. So Karen, just as an example, because do y'all know that Karen is like awesome. And she is a great, huge expert, and she's broker, and she's like the bomb.com and has a real estate school. Okay. So the reason why that I enjoy Karen being on this call is because to make sure that she's placing me also in check. Because in any given point in time, I could just be rendered useless and be dumped, struck stupid. Okay. So I prefer to have experts on this call. Make sense?
Thank you for that. And you, in my eye, you're the bomb. You're awesome. Yeah.
So when we're empowering you as agents, at any given point in time, we could be struck stupid and we need to ask for help, right? Even as brokers, even if you've been in the business 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, for me, 17, DJ, we won't talk about. So just saying, at any given point in time, we could be struck stupid, and we still need to have those lifelines. All right. We need to make sure that the buyer knows those lifelines as well. So in your checklist and in your consultations with your buyers and your sellers, make sure you have resources for them. Home insurance companies, home inspectors, appraisers, surveyors, title companies, real estate attorneys. I have all of that in both my buyer and seller because they're just a list of vendors that I prefer. Right? Just saying. So now we are a week prior to closing, and we are waiting for the lovely 3 words. What are the lovely 3 words we want to hear?
Clear to close.
Alethea, why do we want to hear clear to close? What does that mean?
Everything's checking out. Everything with the lending, we're good. Title says we're good. All the boxes have been.
All the boxes have been checked, right?
Correct, sorry.
You're
Shaking my
good.
head.
So when we hear the clear to close, it allows us to make sure that title knows it's clear to close, that they've been contacted. Now understand, the majority of your title companies, your insurance companies, your buyers, your sellers, they're going to have to do certain things. A week prior to closing, and we get the clear to close, if escrow is not being held at the closing company, what do? We make sure that the wiring instructions are not delivered from your email, that they're delivered party to party, and everybody calls about that to make sure that all the wiring instructions are conveyed properly. How many times does wiring fraud occur? Karen, did you see the last statistics? There's 2 different types of situations that happen. Okay. Many title companies or closing attorneys will not even accept certified checks anymore because they can be fraudulent. If your title company is telling you to send the wiring instructions to your customer, run like hell.
Let me jump in there. Fraud is such an important part of this, and that you should never be in the middle of any of it that has to do with anything that is between your title company and the client and the loan officer and the client. I was talking to a VP at a title company the other day. Even after all this time, they got hit for $580,000.
Say that figure again, DJ.
$580,000 that the title company was out of pocket because of the way that they sent the information, and it was grabbed by somebody out in the internet, out there in wherever those bad people hang out. So it really, really, really is important. Don't even think about giving any financial information anywhere, any place, anybody, Social Security numbers, any of those things, nothing. It's not your job.
Nope, it's not your job. However, it is your job to explain the process and why. I have trained my real estate attorneys and my closing title companies that they need to encrypt their emails, use a portal that is secure, and do not post anywhere the last 4 digits of the routing and account number that they must call the office to receive those. That has worked out pretty doggone well. to have those conversations. So we all train our people to do things to protect the consumer. And that was one of the things that I implemented in my business about 5-6 years ago, you know, and let them understand, all parties. I never, ever, or any of my teammates or my transaction coordinators or anybody on my team will ever email you wiring instructions. Ever, never, ever, never. Can I stress that again? And here's the reason why. If wiring fraud occurs, that money has gone to an offshore account and is not able to be received or retrieved. It is gone. Period. End of story. There is no way to receive it. There is no way to refund it. And guess whose fault it is? Karen, tell us whose fault a wiring fraud issue is.
If we're the one who sends the wire instructions and it's intercepted from our email, well, everyone will get sued, but the agent will definitely be part of that lawsuit. And it's even happened here local. I even know an agent that it happened to, a very well-respected 20 years in the business agent, I think with Coldwell Banker, and her customers' closing funds went out of the country somewhere. Yeah.
I have
So
called wiring fraud because our title company's email address was hacked and I caught it because they had transposed 2 letters. And I stopped everybody on a phone call immediately, 911, texted and emailed, stop right away. Do not wire any funds right now. Literally, that person was on their phone wiring funds and they saw the text message that said, stop immediately. $350,000 cash deal.
yeah, and I used to send them out all the time, 10 years ago. And I even had a folder in my computer of each title company's wire instructions that I would email out until this fraud started. I
Yep.
will not do it ever, ever, ever.
Right.
So
Absolutely
can
not.
I just tell a story, a real quick story?
Of course, DJ.
The when I was selling this was not my client, but a what do you call them? Exotic dancer was buying a house, and she was getting a loan for a certain amount of money, but she had a large down payment. She came into the office, the title company office, with her bodyguard and a huge suitcase full of cash to pay her down payment. And just so you know, I tell you that story because some older people you're going to find, not just exotic dancers, but some older people you're going to find think that when they are making a down payment, they can bring cash, they can bring a check, they can bring in a what do you call it? A cashier's check. They cannot. So just remember that and make sure that you explain to your clients that everything is done through wires now. And so it'll be handled that way. And the other story I can tell you, this was my client, an elderly couple that were coming into Phoenix from back east, came in, they traveled from upstate Michigan to Arizona with $100,000 in their car in cash. And when they brought it to the closing table and obviously could not accept it, that poor man had to go to 10 banks or 11 banks and deposit less than $10,000 in each one, because if he did more, there'd be a hold on it. And his closing was set back, I don't know, 3 days or something like that before we get it. And it was just sad. Plus they had 2 golden retrievers that sat in the office and for like 5 hours while the poor man that was in his 80s was going bank to bank. So just make sure you know the procedures of your title company and what is happening, or your attorney that you're using. It's
Absolutely, DJ. And that brings up your contract to close will go smoother if you have done a better buyer's consultation and asked the right questions. Okay. Mattress money is real. We deal with it a lot in Florida because of retirees. And just to let you know, DJ, I have experience with that. So when I ask people, do you have mattress money? Is that where it's coming from the mason jars in your backyard? Great. Let's deliver it to the attorney so that it can be seasoned immediately. because it needs a certain amount of days in the state of Florida to be seasoned. And they have to do written legal notice as to where that money came from. And when you have a real estate attorney involved, that's why I love real estate attorneys. I'm not against title companies. However, my real estate attorney has done me well for all these years and has led me in the right direction to serve and protect the consumer a whole lot stronger. My experience, some people haven't had that type of experience, so forgive me. It's just from my experience. That money can be seasoned and it still can be used. However, it did cause us to extend the contract timelines in order for that money to be seasoned. But when you're disclosing that to all parties, a lot of times they don't have a problem with it. It's very easy to do. Okay, so we already said, let's get back on track. Forgive me because we're running a little bit over. I wanted to be done by 9 so we could answer questions. However, we are at the point of our communication with our people. Here's what's so cool. Typically, we see during contract to close in excess of 450 email exchanges with multiple people in an email thread. Make sure those of you who may be of a certain age and you don't necessarily use your email very much, that you're creating a name or a folder so that all of that communication can go into one folder and easily accessed. Understand this, because at any given point in time after the closing, if something happens and somebody files a complaint, you have to deliver and must deliver all communication. Do not delete your text messages or emails ever how irrelevant you feel they are. Even if all they say is yes or thank you, do not delete them. Karen, could you speak on that for a minute?
Yes, I've filled up 2 Gmail accounts already. I don't delete anything. And once in a while, I'll go in, and if it's over 5 years old, because you have to keep records for 5 years, where the broker has to keep records for 5 years, but I still keep my records and emails for those 5 years. And then maybe I'll delete them unless it was controversial. And then, because anybody can sue anybody for anything, right? There are statutes of limitation, but you still would have to spend attorney's fees if somebody comes back from 8 years ago and files a complaint. So keep all your emails on the transactions. And again, especially if there was anything controversial, anybody got upset, keep those forever if you can.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Let
it's
me-
protecting whom?
Oh, let me jump in there too. It's like, if you don't use text as your primary form of communication with your clients, use the emails. That's a trail that you can keep, and that's something that the attorneys will look at. You can easily delete text. And so if you don't have, you can print them down and keep them, but still use your email.
Yes. And we also make sure that if the primary communication of our customer is text messaging, then at the end of every day, I'm taking that text thread and I'm dumping it in my email, dumping it in that folder, making sure I can keep all that communication. So DJ, thanks for bringing that up, because we don't want our people not to communicate with us. We want them to communicate with us, which is the segue of where I'm going. You know, typically we're going to be in contact with buyers, seller, vendors almost on a daily basis during a contract. Sometimes it takes a little bit of lag after you've delivered repairs, and repairs are being done and you have loan commitments. So you have about a week to 5 to 7 days where you've got a little bit of lull of what's going on, and then it's right back on it again. Okay, it's our responsibility to follow those timelines. It is our duty as an agent to follow those timelines and making sure that our customer is protected. So a week prior to closing, we've already made sure that we've set up the walkthrough, that we make sure that with that cooperating agent is everything on board for the home to be cleared out 24 hours prior to closing, right? That everything will be good for a walkthrough, because here's the kicker. Let's say you do a walkthrough and they still have stuff in there and you contact the person. Tiffany Mosby, and you walk into the house when you're doing the walkthrough and there ain't a single mother stinking thing that's gone. It's still packed full. And you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do?
That was my first final walkthrough.
Yes, it was your first and final walkthrough. That's why I'm bringing it up.
I called into this amazing group of agents on Zoom because I looked at the time. I said, there's still an after party. And just like this on my phone, crouched down, I'm like, guys, I'm at final walkthrough and the tenant is still here. The moving truck is here. There's a big pile of garbage on the lawn and my clients are less than 10 minutes out. What do I do? I was on the verge of tears. I was freaking out. Thankfully, my wonderful GPS agents talked me off that ledge and it did all work out because I called the listing agents. That was the first thing they told me to do. I was like, is it the broker thing? They're like, no, just call the listing agent. So please take Claire's advice. Please take Karen's advice.
And this stuff happens, y'all, because sometimes things happen and it's okay. You don't have to get upset or emotionally irresponsible. You say, you know what? Things happen. Let's do ourselves a favor. I'm going to contact the other agent right now with you here with me so that we can reschedule this and give these people enough time to do what they need to do and us to do what we need to do. There have been times I've gone back to a house 3 times. Okay. Things happen. Don't think that they're not following their contract. Something could have happened. They could have gotten sick. I had a situation yesterday where somebody wasn't out for a showing because they had a brand new baby. And I'm like, oh, we're not coming in, but it was confirmed. Not a problem. We'll see you tomorrow. You know, not a problem. Just communicate. It's not an emotionally heightened situation unless somebody has died in the house because they electrocuted themselves by doing a self-inspection. Just saying. Things come up. Things happen during a contract. Constant communication. And if your person's constant communication is text, make sure you're downloading that. Just like I'd said before, I place things and will reiterate them constantly so that you feel empowered, so that you can do a great job, so that we're following the rules, that we're following ethics, that we're abiding by the law, because you are worth it. Your business is worth it. And you are the greatest agents that have ever been on this planet because you're on this call increasing your business. Do you have your sources? Do you see the checklist that I put in the chat, which y'all have done so much? So I put the checklist in, those are samples. Use them. I put them in a PDF. If you got a PDF creator, put your logo on it. Do it the way you want to do it. Whatever works for you. When you get through about 10 to 12 transactions, you're going to know what you need to put in there for you, because you will see what you need to remember for you and not have it all up in your head. You don't have to be the person. You are the source of the source. Let me say that again. You, dear agents, are the source of the source. You're holding this transaction together. You're making sure that you're dealing fair and honestly with all parties. And you're following your timelines and making this as seamless and stress-free as possible. And I can tell you, if you're dealing with buyers that are getting a loan today, say this to them. Please understand that the most frustrating part of this whole transaction is going to be the lending process because of all of the federal regulations. It's here to protect you. However, this is the way that it works. They're going to ask you for the 3rd toenail of your great-grandchild that ain't even born yet. Place that expectation in their mind already so that they know that that portion is going to be a little more taxing on them. If you're setting that expectation ahead of time, then you're not going to have to be talking them off the ledge. We're already having to talk buyers and sellers off the ledge right now. So just lessen that for them. Have those greater conversations throughout the transaction. When they see your actions, those referrals will come. And here's a good kicker. If you are doing your job well, you will receive at least 2 other deals out of every transaction. And if you aren't, you need to be talking to your mentor and coach. Because when you're in contact with almost a daily basis and you're saying, great, just wanted to give you an update. I've already spoken with your lender. How's everything going? And here's the kicker. How's everything going? Oh my goodness, have you told everybody in your family about what's going on? Oh, I have, and we've told them that they're great. Fantastic. Can I reach out to them for you? Because I want to make sure that they're either on a search or they have, if they own a home, that they're receiving monthly market reports for them. Because I don't want anybody led astray. That was a quick conversation. What did that just do? Put more people in your pipeline. Right, Karen?
Yep.
I have that conversation throughout the whole transaction. Make sure they're talking about their transaction to people. Make sure that they're seeing themselves on social media. Don't just post, just listed, just sold. Post the process of how happy they are. Ding, 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 ding. Right? Okay, so it is 9:30. I ran over. I don't even have time for after party. Can we cut the feed?
Yes, give me 2 seconds. Stop the live and